Hey everybody, Shwazy here, and in today's video, I'm going to be giving you my 1-year update of the 2021 Ford Bronco. Okay, so I would be lying if I told you it's been exactly 1 year since I took delivery, because in all honesty, it's actually been a year and 2 months. I took delivery of this Bronco back in July of 2021. And well, I really wanted to do a 1-year update in July of 2022, but as we stand here in September of 2022, I just haven't had the opportunity to do so. I've had a lot of cool press vehicles and other content I've been filming, and I haven't really had a chance to film my own vehicles. But in today's video, I do want to talk about some of the things that have gone wrong, some of the things that have gone really right, and some things I would recommend if you guys are looking at placing an order for a Ford Bronco, because there are a couple features in particular that I did not purchase on this vehicle that I kind of regret not doing so. So if you guys are in the market for a Ford Bronco, make sure you watch till the end, because some of these things you might find pretty helpful. Okay, let's start with an update of my 6-month video that I made, well, about 8 months ago now at this point, where I talked about 4 things that kind of went wrong on this vehicle, or 4 things that broke. The first thing I wanted to talk about, which I discussed in that video, was the soft top issue that I had. So if you guys recall, which I'll put that video up on the screen right now, but in that video I showed off a section of the soft top, specifically this section right here, that had a tear that was big enough for me to fit about 1 or 2 fingers into, and that came essentially from the factory, because at the point of me discovering this, it was about 1,000 miles into ownership, and so that was not something that I caused myself. It was just a defect from the factory. Now, it wasn't a major defect because it would never cause any leaks inside of the cabin, but it was kind of aesthetically odd, and so for that reason, I wanted to get it addressed. And well, as you can see right now, there is absolutely no tear on that surface, and that's because I did get this fixed through the Ford warranty. Ford actually referred me to a local upholstery shop, and they got it fixed in like less than 24 hours. I dropped it off in the morning, they fixed it in the evening, and it looked really good. It looks just like it would from the factory. Now, that was the first issue I had with this vehicle after 6 months of ownership. The second thing I had that was an issue that I discussed in that video was, since this window slides down every time you open and close the door, after doing this operation for maybe a dozen times, I would notice when I was driving inside of the cabin that the window would not roll up entirely into this section, and so I would hear some wind noise inside of the cabin, which got a little bit frustrating and would force me to actually physically pull on this switch in order to close the window while I'm driving. So it just meant that the window wasn't really shutting properly after using it, a dozen times. Well, I did get this issue fixed as well. I actually took it to the Ford dealership as well, along with that soft top issue. They realigned the windows, and I will say I haven't really noticed that being a problem since I did that probably about 4 or 5 months ago. So that was something they fixed for free. All it was a window alignment issue. So if you have a similar problem on your Ford Bronco, just take it into the Ford dealership and they'll get that fixed for you. Now, for the third issue that I discussed in my 6-month update was when I put this vehicle into sport mode, and sometimes when I actually just put the lane keep assist button on, I would notice there are these straight lines that are going down on the screen, almost looking like there are wrinkles, as you can see on the screen right now, on the screen itself. It almost looked like it was kind of just a software issue where these lines would show up when I put it in specific modes and then kind of disappear when I take it out of certain modes. Now, I thought this was an issue with the software, but I was actually told by some of you people watching the video in the comments, and also by the dealership itself, is that is actually intended to be on purpose. So this is kind of supposed to give it a sportier appearance to it with these weird uneven lines going down the screen, and that is not something that they can fix, because that is just how the software is made, which I think is pretty dumb in my opinion. I mean, there's no racetrack that I go on where the road looks like it's got creases in it. I really don't understand how this displays a racing setup by putting these wrinkles on the screen, but nonetheless, that is not something they can fix, and so that has not been fixed since the 6-month update, because that's part of the software. Now, I'm not super satisfied with that answer, because even in some normal modes, I can sometimes see a little bit of a wrinkle on the screen, and it's nothing major, nothing like when I put it into sport mode, but there's still a little bit, and that kind of bugs me sometimes. Now, the fourth and final issue I had was the fact that the software would occasionally reset entirely, and the screen would just shut off when I'm driving down the road, and I can't control the climate control, I can't push any buttons. It would just kind of freeze up, and until I restarted the car or drove long enough, the infotainment screen would essentially be useless. Well, I have noticed that that has no longer been an issue. I think they probably did an over-the-air update, and since then the screen has worked really well. It's got a couple glitches every so often, but nothing to the same level that it did back, 6 or 7 months ago. So that is the fourth thing that was pretty much resolved in the last 6 months. So now that all 4 issues that I had in my 6 months with this vehicle have been resolved, you may be wondering, are there any other problems I have noticed in the additional 6 to 8 months of ownership? And the answer to that question is yes. There are a couple other gripes or issues that I have noticed that, I'd like to bring up so that you guys are aware. The first still has to do with the window alignment. And the issue that I actually noticed was a couple months ago, as you can tell, the window slides down, it is frameless. And as a result of that, I did have an issue where this window would not have automatic up and automatic down. Now, what I mean by this is, if you guys are not aware, the Bronco is really useful in the fact that you've got one-touch automatic up and down on all 4 windows. So that's not a common feature on a lot of cars. This vehicle does have that. And the issue that I came upon was, for whatever reason, this vehicle's passenger window would not roll automatic up. So I could lower it without an issue, but when I was pushing this button up, it would actually stop. So as soon as I would let go of the button, the window would stop rolling up. And so it was essentially a manual hold type of feature, and then it would roll all the way up. But that's not where it stopped. There was actually an additional problem where the window was almost out of sync with the rest of the software. And what I mean by that is when I would open this window, it would actually stop rolling down. So as you can see, when you open it, it slides down just a little bit and then it goes back up. Well, when I was facing this problem, the window actually wouldn't slide down at all. So it would continuously catch on this seal over here, which would cause the window to vibrate pretty aggressively when I would open it, more so than it vibrates now. And my fear was that over time, if somebody pulled on it really hard, this window could shatter. And that would be a much bigger issue. And so rather than taking it actually back to the Ford dealership to get it realigned, because it was actually shortly after realigning the driver's side, I decided to tackle this issue by myself. And in all honesty, I wish I could tell you exactly what I did to fix the problem, but I went on some online forums and I played around with some of the switches. I would, hold the switch down for 5 seconds, I would wait, then I would hold it up for 5 seconds, and then I would wait. And over time, after, playing around with it for about 15-20 minutes, I was able to get the window back in alignment, and as you can see, the window does slide down and go back up as it should. Now, the issue with that is I am a little bit skeptical after having 2 different issues with the window alignment to continuously use these windows over time. A lot of you have mentioned your concerns about how these windows are going to last in 10-15 years because the Ford Bronco has these frameless windows and the Jeep Wrangler does not. And you're not going to have these types of issues with the Jeep Wrangler. So how is the reliability or durability of these windows going to hold up when you're doing some extreme off-roading and you're owning this car for a long period of time? And I was one of the early ones to say, I don't see this being a big issue, but after having 2 issues in about a year, I am a little concerned with how well this is going to hold up over time. And even though I still prefer having frameless windows because it allows me to have kind of a more open air experience, there's no giant frame around it, I can also store all these doors in the trunk, I do have a little bit of a concern with how these are going to last over time, and I'll keep you updated on how that goes. But for now, that problem has been fixed. Now, the next issue I faced was just a few months ago was the very first time that I actually took this soft top off entirely. And I'm not just talking about folding it back or sliding it back here by removing these wavy panels over here, which is a complaint a lot of people have. I'm talking I unbolted this soft top and removed it. And what I noticed was after putting it back on, which is not the easiest thing to do in all honesty because it's a pretty heavy unit and it requires 2 people to load this onto the vehicle again. But what I noticed is after installing it, the alignment of the soft top was a little bit off. I actually noticed when I was folding the soft top back up, it would sometimes catch on this lip over here. And even though it's shut and sealed fine and there was no water leaks, it would sometimes catch and kind of not align the same way it used to when the vehicle was brand new. And I know I installed it correctly for two reasons. For one, there's these pegs located down here in the body panel on the inside that your soft top essentially slides into, and those were aligned perfectly. The second reason I know I installed it correctly is because there's been no water leaks since I installed it. And so obviously the soft top has been realigned perfectly because, well, everything fits in place. But for some reason, the alignment was a little bit off. And so now I'm kind of skeptical to continuously take this soft top on and off because I don't know if it's going to continue to get worse over time. I have also noticed since I took off the soft top and put it back on, there's been kind of a ticking noise somewhere in the roof panel, somewhere over here, as I'm driving down the road. I never noticed that sound before I took the soft top off. I'm not sure if it's because it was sitting folded on the ground for about a week and a half, but for some reason it just doesn't fit exactly the same as it did when it was brand new. And so that's something to keep in mind. Now, I don't regret getting the soft top because it's super easy to unclip the front and just fold it back. You get that open air experience. It's just less hassle. So I'd still pick the soft top if I was to reorder this vehicle, but it's just something to keep in mind when you're consistently taking this soft top off and on, that it may not be the easiest thing to reinstall. Now, the next thing I want to mention is, as I'm sure you can tell, this vehicle looks like it has the Sasquatch package because you've got the Sasquatch wheels and tires, and if you take a closer look, you'll see I've actually got the Bilsteins that come on the Sasquatch package as well. But this vehicle is not actually a Sasquatch package, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. But what I want to bring up with that is I've had some people ask me whether when I upgraded to the bigger wheels and tires and the bigger suspension, or the taller suspension I should say, did I notice a change in the power? Now, for those of you that are not aware with this vehicle, if you haven't followed the channel, I have the base 2.3 liter EcoBoost engine. And so it's the smaller of the two. You can get the 2.7 liter V6 or this one. And so mine's the smaller version. And I've had people ask me about the power loss. Well, to answer your question, oddly enough, I didn't really notice a change in the power when I upgraded to 35-inch tires. Now, for those of you that are not aware, the base Big Bend, which is the trim level I have, comes with, I believe, 32 or 32.5-inch tires. These are 35s. And what I did first is I just simply swapped the wheels and tires to these 35s and drove around for about a month or two before I changed the suspension. And I didn't really notice a big change in power when I did that. What's odd is when I ended up having my mechanic install these shocks from the Sasquatch package, these Bilsteins on all four wheels, I actually noticed a loss in power after doing that, which is really odd because the only thing that really changed about this vehicle was adding maybe about an inch, maybe an inch and a half of height. And I don't really know if that would really impact how I feel about the power. So it could just be the fact that I didn't drive this vehicle enough with the 35s, or maybe the additional height adds a little bit more wind resistance, or however you can explain that. But I have noticed the vehicle does seem a little bit slower with the 2.3 liter and the Sasquatch wheel and tire setup. Now, is it so bad that I regret getting the 2.3 liter? No, it's not. But it does take a little bit getting used to because it's slightly slower, especially in the lower RPM range where that turbo hasn't spooled up. Once the turbo is active, though, this vehicle is just as quick as it was before. It's just in those first maybe 1 or 2 seconds where I'm stomping on the pedal and it's not moving that I've noticed a little bit of power loss. Okay, so now that I've bashed this vehicle for everything that's gone wrong, let's talk about everything that's gone right with the Ford Bronco. So after hearing all the complaints that I've had, you may think I regret purchasing this car, and the answer to that is absolutely not. I absolutely love the Ford Bronco, and I would recommend it for literally anybody and everybody. This is a truly impressive vehicle, and I love how capable it is. Even my particular trim level that does not have the lockers or the upgraded axle ratio is incredibly capable. I have taken this vehicle on some pretty cool and scenic routes that I probably wouldn't take just your run-in-the-mill crossover or obviously not a sedan to, and I really like how capable this vehicle is. There hasn't been a single situation I've been in that I felt like I'm gonna get stuck or I'm not gonna be able to make it through. The only time I've really turned around on a trail is when it got a little bit too narrow for a vehicle like this. It was a trail meant more for UTVs and ATVs, and for that reason, this wide vehicle did not fit in that trail. But other than that, I've never been stuck in the Bronco. No snowstorms, no off-roading trails, and nothing like that. And even in places where I've seen other crossover SUVs get stuck in, like in the sand, this vehicle has had no issues whatsoever. The next thing I love about it is the fact that it's gotten me out and about into places that I've never really thought about going before. I've never been a huge avid off-roader. I was never a camper or anything like that. But having this vehicle has really allowed me to get out and about into places of nature and places that I couldn't necessarily reach in just my Toyota RAV4, which is the vehicle I had before this one. It's really gotten me out on the trails, doing some things I've never done before, trying some cool new things, and I love that about this vehicle. Things I didn't think I would like to do, like just going on a trail into a forested area and just enjoying the peace and quiet of just being by myself or with my wife or family and friends. I've really enjoyed that experience, and that's thanks to this car. This is not an experience I would have had if I didn't own a Ford Bronco or, a Jeep Wrangler or an off-road vehicle. And the last thing I want to mention is just how impressed everybody is with this vehicle. I'm talking, people at car shows, people who just walk by, but also individuals I've actively placed into this vehicle and driven either on or off-road have been very impressed with the Bronco, right? It's not just a marketing gimmick. It really is a capable vehicle that gets a lot of attention, especially given the fact that there's still not very many of them, although they are increasing, and I'm getting a little angry that mine's no longer the only one in the city, but this is truly a capable vehicle. It's not just a toy that you're going to show off and take to the mall. Even though some people will do that, this thing is truly capable, and people who have never off-roaded before have sat in this and really realized that this is a comfortable vehicle to do off-roading. This is a vehicle that can get them into that type of sport because it's a closed off experience, but at the same time, you're able to go to some of these cool places and then hit the road and drive all the way home. So truly a testament to Ford to creating this updated version of the Bronco and making it really a capable vehicle and not just, some crossover with just body cladding to make it look like it's off-road capable. This thing can go up against all the other big major off-road competitors and do a really great job at it. Okay, now to finish off this video, I want to talk about two features that I did not purchase on my Bronco that I would recommend for anybody who's a little bit more patient than I am. Now, for the first feature I would really recommend getting is the Sasquatch package. Now, like I mentioned earlier, mine is the Sasquatch wheels and tires and the Sasquatch suspension. I was able to achieve this upgrade because I knew an individual who also had a Bronco, and they happened to upgrade their suspension to a beefier setup, and they upgraded to 37-inch wheels. And so they were actually selling their Sasquatch wheels and tires and Bilstein suspension because obviously they no longer needed it. That being said, I do think that if you are more patient than I am, I would upgrade and get the Sasquatch package. And here's why. For those of you that know me and the channel, you'll know that I purchased this as my daily driver. It replaced my 2018 Toyota RAV4, and so because of that, it had to be a pretty reasonably priced vehicle. I didn't want this to be my expensive, fun car because I have my Dodge Challenger Hellcat for that. This was meant to be the more reasonable vehicle choice, and that's kind of how I justified it. And as a result of that, I decided to get a pretty low trim level, which this one being the Big Bend, which if you guys are not aware, that's just one step above the base level, and it doesn't really have anything aside from the mid package, which includes, the heated seats, the remote start, just some of the, need to haves for me, and it didn't have any of the nice to haves or things I really would have wanted if money was no option. But after owning this vehicle for a year, after upgrading to this suspension setup, I do wish I would just pay a little bit extra and get the Sasquatch package, because that would offer a few advantages that I just can't get right now without going into the aftermarket and likely paying more than what I would have paid for if I did it to begin with. And I'm talking about an improved axle ratio in the back to make it easier to do some rock crawling, and front and rear lockers. My vehicle does not have any type of lockers on it. Obviously, I do have a 4-low system, but it would have been nice to have this locker setup so that if I do get into a hairy situation, I'm not worried. Being being someone who's interested in getting more off-road, I do wish that I had a locker or an improved axle ratio so that I could maybe test this vehicle a little bit more to its limits. It's not like a need-to-have type of thing, but it's more of like an insurance policy where when you need it, it's nice that you have it. Now, the other reason I didn't purchase it was because being a YouTuber, I wanted to be one of the early ones to receive a Ford Bronco. And even back in early 2021, people were already talking about the fact that if you ordered the Sasquatch package or the hardtop, you would be facing some supply constraints. And I didn't want to risk waiting for this car for another year or two and having no opportunity to make videos on it just to get a Sasquatch package that I likely will never use. And I still haven't found a need to use it today. But if you guys are a little bit more patient than I am, or you're not a YouTuber and you need to have this, first and foremost, I would definitely recommend getting the Sasquatch package, because if you pay for those same things yourself, like the locker, like the differential, like the wheels and tires, you're likely going to end up paying more with the installation than what you'll pay for Ford. And Ford warranties those things out of the gate. So keep that in mind if you're considering maybe doing some more extreme off-roading. Now, the second feature I would recommend is actually centrally located in this center screen. And I'm not talking about the 12-inch display, although you do have to get the 12-inch display to get the feature that I'm talking about. Now, the feature that I've noticed would be really nice to have is a 360-degree camera. Now, obviously, due to federal regulation, I do have a backup camera, and it's pretty decent. And even though this screen size is only 8 inches, it's really not that bad. The one thing I wish this did have was the 360-degree camera, specifically the front camera over here right in front of the grill. The reason I think that feature is so vital is if you guys have ever off-roaded, especially in a rocky area, there will be times where you're going up a hill and you have absolutely no idea what's on the other side of that hill. Especially with this type of hood setup where it's a pretty flat hood, it's pretty large, you can actually see the hood from the driver's seat, which is uncommon from most crossovers. It would be really nice to have that front-facing camera so you can actually see what's going on in front of the vehicle. And the other use case for the 360-degree camera, which is something I used when I had the off-rodeo in Moab, was you can actually see when the obstacle is coming up. So oftentimes you're driving, you don't know exactly where the rock is or where the cliff or drop off is, whereas using the 360-degree camera or the front-facing camera, you can see on the screen where the rock is approaching. And so you'll know exactly when it's right in front of the wheel, so you can either slow down or speed up or brake. And it provides just that extra aid or that extra almost spotter when you're off-roading, because it shows you exactly what's going on around the vehicle. And even though you can't really tell the depth perception on a 360-degree camera because everything is two-dimensional, that's not really the use case for it. You're really just seeing where the obstacle is located and what's on the other side of the hood. And that is something I would really recommend. Now, unfortunately, you cannot get it with this 8-inch screen. You actually have to upgrade to the 12-inch. And I believe the Outer Banks model is the lowest trim level that you can get that 360-degree camera or that 12-inch screen. And nonetheless, the 12-inch screen is very impressive. So if you are having to do that, it's not like it's going to be a waste of money. You still get a very functional screen and you get the additional functionality of the camera. So there you have it, folks. That is my 1 year and 2 month update of the Ford Bronco. Overall, I am incredibly impressed with this vehicle. I don't have any regrets about purchasing it, and I would purchase it over and over again and recommend it to anybody who's looking at even some sort of off-roader, because this thing not only does well off-road, but it also handles very well on-road. Yes, there are some features I wish I had purchased with this vehicle, but it's not something that's gonna cause me to lose sleep at night. It's just something to maybe keep in mind if you're in a similar situation like me, where you're not a super big avid off-roader, but maybe you wanna get on some of those trails. But let me know what questions you may have about the Ford Bronco, and I'd be happy to answer them down in the comments below. If you guys did enjoy this video, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for all of the weekly car videos. Also, find me on all of the social media down in the description below at Schwazy_. Until next time, everybody, I hope you stay Schwazy, stay healthy, have a wonderful day.